If there's one thing that unites every member of the outdoor and active community, it's that no matter what your favorite outdoor activity is, we all burn calories, we all need fuel. And that's where Fuel Goods comes in. Fuel Goods is the ultimate curator of nutrition for active people everywhere. Because no one knows more about how you should fuel your adventures or how to get that fuel in your hands than they do. And right now is prime time for fueling. Over the next month, we'll have turkey trots, Santa runs, frosty 5Ks, all along with the temptation to refuel using all of the desserts and holiday staples that will no doubt be in your home for the remainder of the year. Guys, we got to stop the madness. Fuel Goods has done the hard work of assembling a delicious and effective assortment of products to help you fuel your next adventure or event. And if you're overwhelmed, you can order up one of their pre-assorted boxes like the famous Rider Box or the one that started it all, the Runner Box. And when you're done shopping for yourself, order a Fuel Goods monthly subscription as the perfect holiday gift for that calorie-deprived adventurer in your life. Look, I'm hungry. Aren't you hungry? Head to fuelgoods.com and start shopping today. Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True. It's Monday. I'm here with producer Dave, and we're kicking off December with the state of outdoor apparel brands here in the U.S. That's going to be first, but then stick around to hear the Rock Fight's own consigliere, Eoin Comerford, who has some brand hot takes of his own. It's another action-packed Rock Fight, but first, have you subscribed to Rock Fight's weekly newsletter? If not, you still have time to get the original Rock Fight content that we don't put anywhere else. It's in News from the Front. It's our newsletter. It comes out every Tuesday. Head to rockfight.co and click Join the Mailing List to sign up. And lastly, if you're new around here, we would love it if you subscribe to the Rock Fight and click the follow button on whatever podcast app you're listening to us on. Give us that 5-star rating. And that's all we got. So let's start the show. All right, if you listened to last Wednesday's episode of The Rock Fight, you heard Justin Hausman and I talk about the news that French brand Millet is trying to break into the U.S. outdoor specialty market. And we offered some initial thoughts on the challenges that Millet will have. And if you missed it, the gist of our conversation is that Millet is a very cool outdoor brand with great products, but that it has been historically tough sledding for brands from Europe trying to make a significant dent in the outdoor market here in the United States. The feedback I received from some contacts I have in specialty retail was that, largely speaking, there's a lot of love for European outdoor brands, but not a ton of open to buy for them because consumers don't support them as strongly as they do the entrenched brands that we probably talk about the most here on The Rock Fight. I mean, basically, the reach, scope, and scale of our domestic brands make it hard for outsiders to make meaningful inroads to the shop floor. Now, I posted about that episode on LinkedIn, and in the comments over there, someone listed out the European brands who are all currently doing what Millet wants to do. And shout out to Tyler Noonan for compiling that list, which is longer than you may think. So here are the brands. This is the list that Tyler posted on my post on LinkedIn. All right, it goes. Rab, Houdini, Fjallraven, Mountain Equipment, Helly Hansen, Nerona, Adidas, Black Crows, Sweet Protection, La Sportiva, Mammut, Montaigne, Saleva. And I also want to add Picture to the list as well. We both forgot about that.
Colin, Wolfie.
Jack Wolfskin?
You can't forget Jack Wolfskin.
They left. They gave up.
They're a European brand. They can always have their status.
These are the brands who are trying to get presence here. Jack Wolfskin's like, we're out. We can't handle the heat.
They're like fanny packs and Speedos. They'll just be part of the German-American experience.
They're actually they're putting on like glasses of the fake mustache to try and like latch onto another brand and get back into the U.S.
They'll be back. Look, they've got a Euro pass. They have.
I opened this box of Mammut stuff and there's all this Jack Wolfskin stuff.
Generous vacation policy. They'll be good. They'll be back.
Oh
Don't
yeah, just
you
put it
worry.
on your floor. Don't worry about it.
They'll be good. That's right. That's right.
So, looking at that list, though, it kind of drives home the larger point that Justin and I were trying to make, which is that there's just no way that Millet is going to make it relying simply on good press and athlete sponsorships, which is their stated marketing strategy per the announcement that they're coming to the States. But like Justin and I talked about, it won't be enough. I mean, think about the list I just read.
That's
right?
disappointing.
That that's not enough, or the list?
No, it's disappointing that that's their stated strategy.
Right. I mean, so, if you take let's just take an apparel point of view, specifically apparel, because on that list you have Sweet Protection, which is a Norwegian helmet brand, La Sportiva is on there, which is primarily footwear, and Black Crows, which is a French ski brand. And that leaves still about 10 brands, all with assortments where there's going to be a lot of similarities in both the branding and the products. Okay, so let's start with that. Now, let's match up that list against the competition they're all trying to overcome. All right, and these are our U.S. and Canadian outdoor brands. And this list I generated by filtering the hiking apparel brands on REI.com because, hiking is sort of like the one common activity that crosses over with all of these brands. And also, don't forget, a lot of these brands aren't domestic only. Many of them have their own global aspirations to break into other marketplaces outside of the U.S. Or North America, I should say. So here's that list. We have Mountain Hardwear, Outdoor Research, Patagonia, REI, Smartwool, The North Face, Arc'teryx, Artilect, Black Diamond, Columbia, Code Epoxy, Flylow, Free Country, Icebreaker, Cool, Marmot, MEC, Prana, Royal Robbins, Cirrus, Sherpa, Spider, Terramar, Vuari, and let's go ahead and add Stio into that as well. They are not on REI.com, but want to make sure they get their mention. So that's not a short list, right? And there are brands that I know I outright missed, and there are some that are small that I just didn't include, like off the dome. I didn't add Lululemon, Under Armour, Nike.
Those small brands.
Yeah, those little tiny ones.
Yeah.
On the up-and-coming side.
All hidden.
We've talked about brands here like Nara, Passenger, Livson. There's even more, right? There's just so many more. Now, this is kind of where we hit a fork in the road because this would be a great place to pivot into a too much stuff conversation, but that's not what we're talking about today.
You also forgot puff and drinkware.
Well, that's for a very small person.
Well, look, a jacket's a jacket.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's where the outdoor brand for leprechauns.
Right.
But look, if you think of the sheer quantity of stuff that the brands we've listed so far have to make in order to distribute globally, you're really starting to see the bigger picture problem we have on the production and sustainability front. But this is a brand and competitiveness conversation. And every single brand that I've mentioned so far, no matter where or when they were founded, or who they claim they're a core customer to be or whatever, every one of them crosses into that Venn diagram with the products that they make. And when we say there is a sea of sameness in outdoor retail, this is what we're talking about. Just literally dozens of brands with similar vibes and nearly identical products. Now, all of these brands have the same material and fabric options available to them. All of them have mostly the same manufacturing options available to them. In fact, you can bet that many of them make their stuff in the same factories. They are largely speaking all going after the same customer. So where are the opportunities to differentiate? How can they find ways to stand apart in the literal sea of sameness when the lineup gets rolled out at the outdoor cat house? What makes you look and say, ooh, that one? And it's simple. It's in the brand. I mean, it's probably why you hear me get frustrated on this podcast when I see brands yes-anding and what has already been done by others rather than make bold steps to win over consumers. Okay, Dave, I want to bring you in on this in a second because I know this isn't just like in your wheelhouse, but this is your wheelhouse. But before we do, let's use Mie as one last example. Not looking to beat up on them, just using them as an example. So right now I want you to go to Mie's website.
Okay.
And be careful Googling because when you write in Mie, it comes across as millet and you got to look at a bunch of grain.
So many baking options. Okay, hold on.
So the first thing you see on Mie's website when you go to it is what?
Okay, the first thing I see is Millet Days. Mie Days. And it's an ice climber, Colin, in a kind of a blue tinted ice climber telling me that there's 50% off.
Well, we're recording this on Thanksgiving weekend, right? So there you go.
Okay.
And it's the U.S. version of the site, presumably, right?
I'm guessing. Then as
you scroll through, what are other things you see? Does anything look familiar? Maybe.
Well, yeah. I've pretty much had a beer with every one of these people at some point, in some way, in some town. Look, we have smiling people wearing puffy jackets. We have smiling person wearing a pullover. We have a not so smiling person wearing a Gore-Tex jacket. I'm not sure that's, intentional. Right? I'm just saying.
Do the products look familiar?
They sure do. And then I've got a man in a puffy jacket walking someplace. And I have a woman in a puffy jacket looking someplace with a mountain in the background. They look like they were taken a few feet apart.
So fair to say, like, insert, brand website X here.
Without a doubt. They look like category headers, right? Which they are, right? They're mountaineering and ski touring, and they are all. But yeah, sure, it's definitely a lot of landscape photography.
So look, okay, Now, again, I'm not beating up on Mie by having you do this exercise. This is a brand that's been around since 1921. They've clearly done something right to be a relevant and interesting outdoor brand 103 years after they got started. There's a lot of much younger brands who can't make the claims that Mie can.
Yeah.
But this conversation isn't questioning their legitimacy. It's looking at how they can be successful in their goal of entering the U.S. marketplace. And they might get lucky, right? They could be just the right brand at the right time. It's happened before. I mean, things seem to be trending up at outdoor retail in the U.S., as you'll hear from Eoin Comerford when we get to his part of the conversation in a few minutes. Open to buy is increasing. But we all know also that hope isn't a strategy. They don't want to just rely on crossing their fingers. They need to be looking at how they can stand apart against the more than 40 other brands I listed just a few minutes ago, because that's who's standing in their way. And according to outdoor retailers, that's who the domestic consumer is conditioned to buy. So the last thing before I pass the mic over to Dave, I want to ask, are there too many brands? I mean, it doesn't really seem like it, because most of the brands I read are relatively seasoned. They've been around for a while. They continue to somewhere between exist and thrive. But even still, what do you find exciting about a brand on the list I just read? Right? They're all relatively competent at outfitting you for your adventures in everyday life, but what makes any one of them interesting or stand apart from any others? And I'm actually asking you, the listeners, this question. I want you to send your answers to that question. What do you find exciting about these brands? Please send your answers to myrockfight@gmail.com. I want to know which outdoor brands give you that little jolt of excitement when you see their stuff and why you think that is. Again, myrockfight@gmail.com. So he's been very patient, maybe not so much very patient, actually. Hasn't been patient really at all. To Producer Dave, what do you find exciting about any of these brands or any brand at all?
I am a jaded veteran of the outdoor branding wars, and it's hard to get too excited over the same thing over and over and over. I mean, how many landscape photographs can you look at and see the same, beautiful photography, single person, arms in the air, being excited that they're there and you're not? So I think that, you said, what's the difference? That's my biggest issue. And we go back to the Mie website. My biggest issue is you remove the logo and it'd be impossible to tell whose website you're at. Right. If they make gear of outdoor
and not just
variety,
theirs, any of these brands.
That's right. That's exactly right. So I think, so what do I get excited about? I see the opportunity to distinguish oneself is so evident when you look at the branding across the board. They all fall into different groups. Some kind of handle it similar ways. Like if you take an Arc'teryx and a Nerona and a Patagonia, they're going to have elevated photography. That's what they do, right? Other brands are going to make sure everyone is smiling, right? Because they're open for everybody and it's smiling. We're having fun now. We're just going to continue to beat that into you. So everybody has a shades of it, but it does seem to be the same playbook over and over. And so I'm looking for someone with an opportunity to be distinctive and to bring a new way of presenting like-minded or similar products to the market. Because at the end of the day, what you calling brand, it's about story. Who is telling a unique and consistent and interesting story to the mix? Patagonia, regardless of whether they're good at humor or not, sometimes they fail and fall in. They've told a consistent story, both visually and verbally, for a very long time. So therefore, you're buying into their story and the way they tell it. And people have tried to chase that, but no one have really leaned into they're actually storytelling beyond just their product, right? And they have, and the famous catalog kind of started this off. I'm going to tell a little bit longer form. I'm going to provide some editorial. And so I've integrated story as well as my product technical feature benefit story as part of our brand. And I see brands as kind of unwilling or unable to do that for the most part. So what you get is a one-dimensional conversation with them.
This has got to be semi-universal, right? I mean, maybe we have more brands in the outdoors that are sort of stepping on each other's toes. But I got to think, if you pick a category, there's got to be some similarities, right? Whether it's automotive or soda, the soda wars, right? Like the sort of the way brands tell their story. There's probably some similarities in the category regardless. I just kind of was seeing this list of all of these brands.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
how are half of these still around? Like, why haven't it all just been
Well,
cannibalized by like 8 brands and that's it now? You know what I mean?
Well,
Why do they,
in a kind of way they have, right? I mean, in terms of kind of, that's still kind of a 20-80, right, rule. The
yeah.
20% of those brands are the ones doing most of the volume. So
Yeah,
it
good point.
does sort itself out. I mean, also too, what you're getting into is all of these brands, for the most part, are trying to capture a multi-generational audience. So they're trying to be right down the middle with that, as opposed to standing for a Many of these brands started not just by standing for the outdoor, they stood for a generation, right? This was the
Sure.
generation of that time that they were the brand of. And so as they grow, they try to keep that generation as they age and get older, but how do we keep younger? And they end up kind of not doing anything for anybody. Middle of the roads, right? And that's the kind of safe path. And it doesn't mean it's the right path. But if you do look at like other sectors, like say an action sports sector, those brands are unabashedly talking to a younger consumer, right? And so therefore their tactics are focused on that. And so they tend to be a little bit more exciting, a little bit more energy to their market. They're more to stand out. Any kind of anything looking at that younger consumer is going to have to, that's the playbook you have to draw from. So you're going to get energy that way, where an outdoor, they just have a tendency to kind of just, like I said, middle of the road it, and just a good way to get run over, Colin. You're just not gonna stand out.
Well, and there's also the vast majority of the stuff going to people who aren't really interested in doing outdoor adventure sports, right? It's just
See,
like
that's no
I just need
excuse
a
to
coat.
that's no excuse to look like everything else. In fact, maybe that's more of an excuse, because they're going to be less discerning as to the true technical differences. The gearheads are all going to be out there knowing the differences between these things, and they're going to make these choices based on minute, distinction. People out there just want a coat that works, that looks cool, that plays my kind of that fits my identity status, right? And so,
right.
give me an easy way to define that, and I'm going to make an easier choice to find you, versus looking through things that all look the same thing. I mean, again, it goes back to the one-dimensional conversation. Brands have a one-dimensional conversation. I am an outdoor, so I'm going to show you outside pictures of being outside, and I am a product, so I'm going to show you a picture of a product, and that's it. Where we have relationships with brands on a personal level, right? And so I often use a kind of I've talked about it before, but kind of like a persona map. 360 degrees, you're surrounding your consumer with different messages about status, about authority, about being a cheerleader, about joy, about pragmatism, the value that I bring. All of these need messaging to talk to your consumer so that they can adopt an actual relationship with your brand. And if you lose all those to just one or two or three, they get drowned out, and then I'm just having a transactional relationship with your brand. And that's what I see happening.
So is there one on either of these lists? Which, by the way, I just realized we also should have had 66 North on the European one. Bad by me. But is there one on here where you, as a consumer, like, put aside your brand hat for a second, you look at that brand, you're like, that's the one I like. That's the one for me. Like, that's the one that kind of.
Well, I guess here's the thing. This is what I like. Do I think that there's too many brands? Like, going back to the beginning, no. If brands are good at telling a distinct story, they're going to find their audience. Okay, and so it's like, I take Houdini. Houdini is very disciplined about their brand, and they very much want to tell this same story about who they are and how they present. I personally find that not that interesting. I personally think that that's going to have a tough time resonating in the U.S. market in under 30 years.
It's because you hate circularity. It's well known and documented how much you hate
I am just
circularity.
Against it. But are there folks that dig what they're putting down? Yes. And so they've clearly defined themselves, but it's a slow growth. That's part of their story too. So good.
Right.
That's great. 66 North, who you brought up, I think they do a very interesting job of being credible outdoor with an elevated sense of fashion and aesthetic. And even their landscape pictures tend to have a little bit something different to them, so it feels different than another outdoor
more in
brand.
the Arc'teryx wing of the outdoor vibe, right?
Right. They brought a look to themselves, and that was part of their brand discussion with people. This is what we're bringing you, something that feels elevated. So that's as much of a value and a feature as kind of the product itself. It's like, what am I feeling? And so many of these brands can't break out of that. It all feels the same versus no, it's a similar theme, but it's elevated, it's different, it's distinct. It's the way we're talking about it.
So the one thing I said on the episode with Justin was that, this is where, okay, the stated strategy from Millet in their press release was, and again, I'm just going off of what's in the press release, and I'll put it out there again. Anyone from Millet over in France or here in the U.S., reach out, myrockfight@gmail.com. We'd love to have a conversation with you. I think this is very interesting. I'd love to get your purview on this. The one thing, like if the strategy is sell it into some retail shops, which someone will try it. I mean, there's always going to be someone who gives it a shot. Maybe you do get it placed at REI. That'd be great for you. But then if the complementary sort of experience goes with athlete sponsorships and press releases, it just doesn't feel like enough to me to stand out, right? You need to educate the consumer. You need to kind of really differentiate your brand to kind of like to do what Dave is talking about. So I was like, they need to advertise. And I don't mean like just start running like Super Bowl ads, but like, go weird. I think I said in the newsletter last week, like go full Aiden at Nutter Butter and like really get people talking about you. Just like what is the, Justin said, well, listen, everyone's going to call you Millet anyway. Like do a bunch of ads with like Millet in it and lean into it. Like, and I know that's sort of like low hanging fruit and we're just kind of spitballing, but how do you feel like what is, if you're Millet, what is the way you sort of break in and stand apart from all of these other brands?
One thing about that, it has been determined by science that European outdoor brands do not have a sense of humor, Colin. So therefore, running
here's your opportunity. Have a sense of humor.
So clearly, that's not going to fly. Right. No,
we must be earnest and stand on the mountain.
That's exactly right. I am.
That might be part of the problem.
I am
our retailers are saying.
Well, there's always a cultural kind of divide for sure. For the longest time, there has been some maxims that kind of play themselves out in our industry. One was that an apparel brand can't make footwear, that it never works. A footwear can move into apparel. That has come down a bit some, but it's still a kind of like I said, it kind of holds itself out. The others, that is, an American brands can go to Europe, but European brands can't come to America. And that was just, I think, mostly based on just kind of the kind of gender styles and things like that we have kind of in this country. We're just not as fashionable at the end of the day across the mainstream. But those are just, like I said, more of just kind of observations of the past, not necessarily what can happen going forward. Mm-hmm. But it is built-in bias for sure. Like you said, retailers though, they see there's a uniqueness in some of these brands, but they don't help them tell that story. So like you said, advertising, Millet basically said through their press release is that we're going to offer some product, we're going to have some salespeople visit you, but we're not going to support this in any way to create awareness or preference amongst your consumer. I mean, that's what they've said. Right. And so it's just like, so you're not going to employ the tactics that are necessary to break into a market. If you were a startup with that kind of plan, people are like, well, how long are you going to take? I plan to break $2 million in sales in 60 years. We'll get there. So I think that's part of the issue. So they've kind of telegraphed that they're not going to really support this in a way that needs to happen, as opposed to saying, you know what, we're committed to. So we're going to come in here and make sure that your customer knows who we are, right? And we're going to really break out of that. And, it doesn't even have to be of a, super, super outrageous repositioning. It's just getting, how am I going to start talking to your customer, retailer? How am I going to talk to them? And like I said, build awareness and preference.
Yeah, and before anybody kind of comes at us that we're being mean to some of these brands, like don't forget, this is in response to the fact that I had a retailer say to me, I'd carry 5 or 6 of these European brands, but they just don't sell that well in my shop. They've tried. I'm saying, how do we kind of work around that established issue and create opportunities for these brands to be a little more successful, to get some dealers to have on, to inform the consumer that like, oh, have you heard of that cool new brand that's doing really fun and interesting things? I saw it on Instagram and TikTok, and now I'm actually in a shop looking for it. Like, that's kind of what we need to get to.
So since we're talking about European brands, maybe a monarchy analogy would make sense here, Colin. That product is king, right? We understand that, but brand is queen, and we all know who really runs the show, right? So in one sense, like you said, the retailer, they've got great products, they merchandise well, they're beautiful, but they just don't sell because you don't have the brand adding that aspect to it so that they don't know when they're coming in, people are coming in, or they're reinforcing why I should believe my instinct. Boy, that looks really good. Ooh, it's got a high price point. It must be premium, but I'm just not sure. Right? You got to fill in with both king and queen there.
Yep. So, again, I ask our listeners, which one of these brands give you that little jolt? Why do you like them? To Dave's point, like, what is it about the queen that makes you go, ooh,
that's right.
Those guys are awesome, and why? myrockfight@gmail.com. Now that we've solved all those problems, it's time. Time for our weekly segment to make sure you're getting more out of the outdoors. It's time for More with Thermore. Well, since we mentioned them in the last segment, let's throw a little love to a brand that is very familiar with doing more with Thermore, and that would be Stio. And right now, Stio is running their holiday sale on their website, stio.com, which, because of course they are. It's Thanksgiving. So that includes, on that website, that includes maybe the best jacket I've ever seen, which is the Stio Buckthorn Insulated Snap Shirt that is powered by, you guessed it, Thermore EcoDown. Like I've told you before, Thermore EcoDown is the sustainable alternative to down feathers. EcoDown is made from 100% post-consumer plastic bottles. It can save up to 10 bottles per garment. And listen, product designers and developers out there listening to this, you want to be sure to use Thermore EcoDown in your next lineup for your brand, because EcoDown doesn't require down-proof fabrics to be used. It has a super soft hand feel and a high warmth to weight ratio. And we just got done telling you that your brand needs to differentiate itself from all the other brands out there. Well, you can start with the basic ingredients and the products that you're making. So if you want a dope jacket, head to stio.com for the Buckthorn Insulated Snap Shirt. And if you want to make a difference in your own apparel collection, head to thermore.com to learn more about EcoDown, because whether it's making amazing new garments or staying warm and safe out on the trail, you can do more with Thermore.
Colin, that's such a feel-good story, right? We have a North American brand working with a European ingredient. Kumbaya. I just think this is where it all begins.
These are brands that are differentiating themselves.
They are.
That's what we're talking about
on
here,
both
guys.
sides of the pond.
Dave.
Yes.
It's time. Time to get into this week's chat with outdoor industry insider and consigliere to the rock fight. It's time to hear from our guy, Eoin Comerford. All right, well, we're back with Eoin Comerford, Rockfight Mafia's consigliere, and to take a look inside the outdoor industry. Eoin, how was your Thanksgiving? Are you missing your retail days this weekend?
Not so much, actually. This is my first Black Friday in centuries, where I wasn't watching the sales tick in by the minute. So it was weirdly freeing. And usually, actually, my family decorates the house on the Friday after Thanksgiving, and I managed to avoid that by working. And so I think my wife thought this year that I would actually help, but I managed to work anyway. So
the topic you picked out today, you said, was the trend in the industry about contract to grow. What is it that you got for us today?
Yeah. What I'm really seeing in the news and in talking to brands is this dawning realization that 2022 was an outlier. It wasn't just another year in the ongoing growth of the industry. And more brands kind of just saying, hey, okay, we get it. We're not going to get back to 2022. We're not going to grow beyond that. And in fact, we need to contract before we can grow, because we're at this unsustainable level of production. There clearly isn't enough sort of organic demand in the marketplace from the consumer to buy it at full price, and shoving it down the consumer's throat with discount after discount, or shipping it off through Sierra or whatever, is just not working. And we're at this unsustainable level of margins to where we can't really grow the business. And so really, in order to get to a better place, we have to contract to grow. So, which is really very, it's like the antithesis of the private equity model or the overall stock market model, which is growth. Ideally profitable growth, but you have to grow, right? You have to get bigger year after year. And there's a mantra within private equity, even within businesses, called growth or die, right? You're either going to grow, and if you're not growing, you're dying, basically. But the other mantra, which I think is even more to the point, which is, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. And I think that's where the industry is right now. Is they're like, oh, okay, we just have way too much shit, and we probably produced too much for a long time. But now maybe we finally have an excuse as a company, as an industry, to take a step back and say, okay, let's do a reset and figure out, what is actually our natural sustainable volume level. And really, I think one of the first companies that I saw go down this path was actually Wolverine Worldwide. So Chris Huffnagel took over their CEO, I think, 23. And I mean, Merrill at Wolverine, it's been a rough go. So we'll call it. I mean, like the whole Moab 3 launch, I mean, everything just woof. Anyway, they just basically said, okay, we're just going to cut. And now they sold off some assets, which was fine. But even in the core group, I want to say they're down. Their Q2 results, they were off 40% from 2022. 40%. So not quite cut in half, but I mean 40%. That's
huge.
That's huge. It's
yeah.
But by the same token, their gross margins were back up to historical levels, up like 400 basis points. So which is a lot. I think their inventories were down 50 some percent. So they'd slashed their inventories, which obviously needed to happen. And now they're starting to see margins come back. The most recent, I haven't really dug into their Q3 numbers quite yet, but they narrowed the sales gap. I think it was off about 16%. And I think Merrill actually comped. So a positive comp, very low, but I think the Merrill brand comped. And their net income doubled. But now I'm hearing it's more of a drumbeat of that. So Black Diamond just came out. Same basic message. And Neil Fisk is there, and great operator. I've known Neil since his Eddie Bauer days.
Yeah, they announced theirs in the spring. Black Diamond's been talking about it almost all year.
Okay, so it's similar, but right, because he came in because the prior regime there was, I would say, focused on Wall Street to a fault, and very much the outward perception of the company. And I think if you talk to people inside Black Diamond, they felt that and really hated it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right?
It was not good. It was not good times at Black Diamond the last few years.
No. It didn't feel like an outdoor company. It felt like a private equity company. So I think with Neil and the new regime there, they're really getting a little bit back to the roots, which I think is absolutely the right thing to do. Now, that said, I just forwarded you their Black Friday email, which was up to 70% off, which is, oof.
That's not a Black Friday sale. That's like a liquidation sale. That's a lot. It's a huge percentage.
It is. But actually, I want to say last year's Black Friday sale was up to 90% off. So really, we're getting better.
So what are some other examples of folks you're seeing out there who are looking to proactively contract to grow?
Well, Rumple Blankets just came out with an article about what they're up to and how they're pulling back. And I've talked with Wiley, good guy. They've been through it, quite frankly, the last couple of years, I think, and saw massive growth, and then like 600% growth, I think it was in 2022, and then really I think started down a path that maybe wasn't the right path for them in terms of distribution and pricing and all kinds of stuff and product, and now they're also retrenching and kind of getting back to basics, so to speak, in terms of their product, their retail pricing, their overall approach.
Well, I was just we're calling this contract to grow. Isn't this, and kind of like you said, there was this kind of coming out of the realization that 2022 was not a typical year. Wasn't that realization going on then? Didn't we already know that this were coming out
pretty
of
atypical,
right? And coming out of the pandemic, we knew these. Like I see this problem is like we're growing too fast. all the forces that enable this growth are unsustainable, and there
Guys,
are
we're up
indicators.
60%.
Yeah,
This
there's
is going to keep
indicators
happening.
telling us this, but we're going to double down, and we got caught holding the overstocked bag. I mean, frankly, that's what this sounds like.
Yeah, but it's just human nature to believe. It's human nature to believe that the good things that happen you directly impacted, and the bad
Right.
things that happen weren't your fault. I mean, look at inflation, right? And this latest election. The reality is that wage growth actually kept up with inflation in this country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But people were so pissed off about inflation because they felt like inflation happened to them, whereas they earned that wage growth. Right. So it's the same thing within the industry. It's just like, oh yeah, finally people are getting outdoors. Okay, this is how it should be and how it always will be. And yeah, not so much.
I was also thinking, look, everyone, and probably maybe it's the effective private equity into this, but everyone wants that hockey stick kind of growth from their brand, and I think we should just make in the outdoor. We should just reserve hockey stick growth is for software technology, for tweener fads, and for fugly footwear. Those are really the brands that get to grow like a hockey stick. Everybody else needs to be more measured.
We'll call that the Crocs corollary.
That's the Crocs corollary. Those three sectors, you can grow like a hockey stick. Otherwise, you better stair step.
Get your gibbets ready.
Well, you would think that one of the big learnings that should have come out of 2022 is, hey, what happens when actually demand meets or outstrips supply? Guess what? We actually get to sell product at full price. And that, that feels really good. And it's very profitable, and we can pay our people, and actually everyone's happy in that regard. But it's the constant chasing of growth that ultimately kills you, and that kill the industry, right? Because I think the industry coming out of 22, the greed glands were going because the lesson wasn't, oh, it was great that demand outstripped supply and we sold some full price. It was, gosh darn it, if I only had 15 more kayaks and 12 more bikes in my store, I could have absolutely crushed it this year. Even though I did crush it, I could have crushed it even more. And so it's that left wanting feeling.
I guess kind of last thing before we move into our other topic is as you look at maybe these three bands specifically, Rumpel, Wolverine, / Merrill, and Black Diamond. Like, how do you see this playing out for them? Do you feel like this is going to really work for each of them? I mean, obviously, you said it's working already for Wolverine, but how do you see it all kind of playing out in the next 6 to 18 months here?
Yeah, I think a lot will come back around to your prior question about product, right? So, okay, it's great that you are reestablishing the foundation, but now you still have to build back on that foundation. And if all you're doing is bringing in less of the same old stuff that you sold all along, you're really not going to get back into a growth mode, because trying to reignite the growth engine without any increase in demand will get you right back to where you started, right?
Right.
So to me, it's okay, this is good. Strip back the product, strip back, do the 80-20 rule, strip out the garbage styles that really weren't selling and were just mucking everything up for everybody. But now what are we going to replace them with? What are people actually wanting and demanding in the marketplace, and how can we meet that demand, versus just producing the same old stuff, or different color variants on the same old stuff.
Well, the second thing we want to talk about is I've been hit up no less than 6 or 7 times since the election by listeners hoping we'll do a tariff episode. And, up until this last week, I was hesitant to pursue it. It's a lot of campaign rhetoric. Let's see what happens, kind of thing where we are. And now, obviously, it's been announced that there's, the incoming Trump administration will indeed put high tariffs in place with the U.S.'s 3 biggest trading partners in Canada, Mexico, and China. And it seems like a relevant time to crack open the tariff conversation. And these topics are why you are now part of our team here at the Rock Fight. So, this will likely be a recurring topic as things play out. But as we sit here today, what are your thoughts on this incoming tariff policy, and how it will impact the outdoor industry?
Yeah, it creates so much uncertainty, quite frankly, about where this thing is going and how permanent it will be. Will it happen? Will the Trump administration follow through? Will they be able to? I think they have a certain degree of executive power to do it, but beyond that, I think that it will require some congressional acts. And there's a lot of folks, I think, on both sides of the aisle that don't love this idea, because it
Mhm.
is ultimately going to be inflationary, more than likely, for American workers and for American people. So yeah, it's super challenging. Because I think the last round of tariffs that that Trump put into place were actually effective in slowing down China and Chinese imports into the U.S. And I think a lot of companies in the outdoor space really did look at least diversifying their supply chain, if not totally moving out of China. And so,
Mhm.
the beneficiary there was definitely Vietnam, but then even more emerging apparel manufacturers like Bangladesh, Pakistan, even Jordan, and areas like that, where where there was more favorable tariff elements. So now the question is, well, is everybody going to get hit with tariffs, and what does that mean? um, the other challenge is that, quite frankly, there's a lot of the problem with tariffs is sort of the rule of unintended consequences.
Mhm.
Like as a prime example, one company that I'm familiar with is Ewer. So Ewer is a small women's led apparel brand, and they actually are they onshored. So supposedly the whole Trump administration is about, okay, we want to onshore manufacturing, create American jobs. So Ewer did this, right? Mallory, who's the founder there, she said, gosh darn it, we're going to do this. We're going to set up a sewing operation in Missoula, Montana, not exactly the center of the apparel industry. So she did all that hard work, but her core items use a Polar Tech fleece, and she's paying 47% tariffs. 47% tariffs on that fleece, because guess what? Polar Tech won't give her access to the US made product, so she has to import it from China. So, similar story, under the last Trump administration, where they put these big tariffs on Chinese steel to help with the U.S. steel industry. Guess what? That worked. Prices went up. The U.S. People bought a lot more steel from U.S. manufacturers. But the problem is, guess what? Steel is a material that goes into things like cars and dishwashers and everything else that are built in the U.S. And so those prices went up, right? And so then those people were hit, from a profitability and from a sales perspective. So there's it's all very intertwined. The other thing too, quite frankly, is it's not like these countries are just going to sit on their hands and go, yeah, okay, yeah, 25, 40%, 60% tariffs, whatever it is. Sure, that's fine. Whatever you want to do, USA. They're going to either retaliate,
Yep.
and so that's going to hit US manufacturers, right, who are exporting goods, or they may devalue their currency to offset the impact of tariffs. So it's a very, yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, these are big ships to turn, right? It's like to your point earlier, these are long lead time products and brands. The way things come to market, it's not just a flip a switch. Even like a Ewer, like you mentioned, I know it's a little bit of a different example, but like that's a small brand. It's still months to make stuff and where you're going to get your stuff from and how you make it and where you ship it, all that stuff. So it's not none of this is simple, and it's just creating a lot of chaos. I guess to kind of put a bow on it, if we're at a point now where we're all feeling confident the outdoor industry is entering in a healthier period, let's say, how does this become a wrench in the works for that? Does it kind of derail that, or does it concern you for the future of the industry, the short term future of the industry?
It does, because I think we already have a bit of an affordability crisis within the industry around the
Yeah.
products that we sell, and so I don't think that the outdoor consumer can absorb another hit. Right? We get about, I think on average about 20% price increases within the industry coming out of 22. With the supply chain shock and overall inflation and all the rest of it. Another 20% increase would really, really hurt, and would further, I think, set the industry back in terms of being able to get more people outdoors and make product more accessible to more consumers. So I don't think that the consumer can take that. So the industry is going to have to figure out, either they're going to have to absorb it, and it's not like the industry is rolling in profits these days, or there'll be changes to supply chains. I think that the challenge in a lot of ways is many of the production capacities that are needed around things like apparel or footwear or even tents, etc. A lot of that just doesn't exist anymore in the U.S. I mean, yes, there are pockets of folks that are making stuff here in the U.S. primarily for military contracts, right? And so, yes, if you want to have a nice, seam seal Gore-Tex jacket, there's like, I don't know, three factories, that could maybe make that product here in the U.S., but they don't have boatloads of capacity, right, to do that.
Right.
And then you also don't have the skilled folks to work in those areas. I mean, these are skills that in many cases have been lost. And so, quite frankly, if you want the most beautifully produced like seam sealed Gore-Tex jacket in the world, you're probably going to China, right? I mean, I know that sounds antithetical to people that like, oh, Chinese quality, yada yada, but no, really, in this day and age. And so even if the industry wanted to onshore and wanted to get back to the US, and I'm sure that there are people that do, that could be a decades long process to get
Right.
to a place where that could happen.
So how does if you were put on your specialty retail hat, what would you be doing to mitigate some of this, either just risk or actual eventuality? Things are going to get more expensive from brands like that. What would you do to maneuver?
I would probably be looking at how I can, because if brands are going to get more expensive, and if I assume that my customer can't step up to that, yeah, I would be looking at other areas. We talked about the whole used gear element, bringing that in as a way to have affordability within the store.
Right.
Maybe looking at athleisure, which I think a lot of specialty retailers are already looking at, which typically has slightly lower price points than premium outdoor product, and so it's a little bit more accessible. But yeah, looking at an overall mix of price points to where yes, I'm still going to carry obviously the really high end outdoor product, but I'm probably going to need to mix in some other elements that are still affordable to the majority of customers.
At what point do you start considering your brand mix and looking for brands maybe made here?
I think folks are already doing that to a degree, and I think they should, right? Absolutely, we should support U.S. manufactured product, and I think that there's a customer for that. I would say most studies, though, would say that from a consumer perspective, consumers will tell you that they value made in the USA, just like they'll tell you that they really value sustainably built product. But at the end of the day, those things are, items like 5 and 6 on the list of reasons why they buy a product.
Say, value and what makes you buy something are two different things.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can value all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Consumers will tell you all these things they care about, but at the end of the day, right, it's like,
right,
it's brand, it's price, it's product.
All right. Well, that's Eoin Comerford. He's the Rock Fights consigliere. You can follow him on LinkedIn, right? We want to do that. You can see him if you're going to ISPO this week. You can actually get his autograph. He'll be there in person. Run up, say hi, say I listened to you on the Rock Fight. And where else?
Right.
Anywhere else you want people to find your work?
No, I think that covers it, really. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks as always for coming on. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Hey, you outdoor retailers, listen up. We know you're sick of it. You know you're sick of it. You're sick of it, aren't you? Another sales rep walks in, and they're showing off some flimsy, forgettable apparel line that looks like it was meant for a mall. The so-called outdoor brands, well, they're churning out gear that won't make it past the doors of a Costco come Saturday. You need something else. You need gear built for granite and ice, for the steep and the cold. You need a brand that's been stripped down and built up for real wilderness. You need Northwest Alpine. Back in 2010, Northwest Alpine set out to make the apparel the big brands were forgetting. The others got caught up in fashion shows, but Northwest Alpine, they went back to the essentials. They make gear that's simple, light, strong, and made to last. And where do they make it? Right here in the USA. Now, if you're thinking, wait, you mean Northwest Alpine's Black Spider hoodie made with Polartec Power Grid is sewn up in the States? Yeah, you heard that right. And if you're tired of black, don't worry. They've got colors too. So here we are at a time when everything's uncertain. Costs are going up, tariffs are looming, and old bloated brands are hiking prices. Northwest Alpine's here with American-made gear ready to stock your shelves. So get in touch by sending an email to info@nwalpine.com, and set up a line showing today, Northwest Alpine, made here for all the right reasons. All right, man, it's time for the parting shot. Who's going first?
I'll go first today.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Since we're in the brand world today,
Dave.
This week's parting shot is the Jaguar rebrand. And for some of you that haven't been following this along, the classic British car brand Jaguar, kind of stuffy old British kind of classics, which is why some people love it, has completely rebranded themselves. New logo, new position, new consumer. Honestly, the rebrand reminds many people of maybe the Zoolander 3. It really is an over-the-top expression of kind of the the modernist art scene of London, if you will. And I guess my parting shot is not. There's two ways to look at it. Like, is the positioning a smart move, and is the execution right? And there's been a ton of people attacking its execution, big time. I mean, it is a jolting, jarring shift from where they are. And then there's the positioning part is like, it is no one near the way, or it's in no way positioned to what the brand has been talking to for the last decades. So it is a massive shift in that regard. My parting shot is, I think the positioning is, I get why they're doing it. They're in a tough market with a high-end product. They really need to radically do something different. I'm going to give them credit for that. I think it's execution, even the type of consumer that they're going after, that could be really smart, but what they've done is a little parody-like. We'll have to see. They don't have the product to back it up right now, so it feels even more jarring because you've taken this brand and applying it to their hunter green Jaguar. It just doesn't seem to go together. But I think the jury's out. Let's see what they do with it, or if they would come running back and, this is a new Coke situation, right? Where they put all their time and effort into that and then have to retreat. Or what is it? What was the one later? The Gap, right? They did a repositioning with their logo and within a week had to reinstate the old one and just burned millions of dollars of money. So we'll see if it's that. But they certainly got attention. They got a lot of people talking about it, both for and against. And so good on them.
So you're saying that they've already developed the Jaguar Classic logo?
Oh, I'm pretty sure that's exactly on its way. That's right.
Right.
It's it's the collab with Tommy Hilfiger, right? Or Ralph Lauren. You could kind of the American, Burberry would be the appropriate kind of apparel piece, right? Come on.
All right, for my parting shot, I'm getting the back of retailers everywhere because we need to turn off the Christmas music. All right, it's low-hanging fruit to start in on those who start playing Christmas tunes on November 1st. And even though I would prefer a world where we would only listen to Christmas music on either Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, on both Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I think that makes the most sense. I think that makes it be so exciting. Like, 2 days, we're listening to all these songs, and it's fresh and fun. I accept, though, the agreed to terms that Christmas music is officially allowed as soon as we see Santa Claus arrive at the end of Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. That's when it's allowed. Don't start it before. I also don't think it should extend past Christmas Day, but that's not the conversation I want to have today. I don't think that everyone working in every retail store should only listen to Christmas music for the next month, right? So last week and the day before Thanksgiving, I was in a grocery store and the Christmas music was on, which is a clear violation of the Macy's parade rule, but I digress. And there was someone working in the store who had already had enough of it. And now there's a long way to go for this person. But it occurred to me in that moment, would anyone complain if they walked into that grocery store in December and it wasn't playing Christmas music? Every store that every person listening to this will walk into in the next 30 days will be playing Christmas music. And yes, that sets the mood for holiday shopping, but wouldn't it be nice if occasionally you got a break And I'm not being a Scrooge here. I genuinely like Christmas music. It's hard to say that a lot of times in a row. But even the best of things can be too much sometimes, and the sanity of our retail workforce is at stake because I speak from experience when it's December 22nd and some terrible consumers making your life a living hell in a packed store, and in the background, all you can hear is Bing Crosby telling you for the 13th time that day that Mele Kalikimaka is the thing to say on a bright Hawaiian Christmas day. You might snap. All right, so let's pace ourselves with the Christmas tunes. That's my parting shot.
Well, Colin, I just don't share your bleak worldview, but
Oh, you've had it on since Halloween? Is that what you're telling me, Dave?
just saying there's a place for Christmas music that isn't just 2 days.
How great would that be? Christmas Eve. Oh, it's Christmas Eve. Put on the Christmas music. It'd be so great. And then 48 hours later, it's gone.
Well, I do wait till Christmas Eve to watch Rudolph. So we try to exercise some discipline.
Well, we can wrap it up there. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. Our producer today, producer David Carsad. Art direction provided by Sarah. I needed it yesterday. Gensert. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out, it's Krista Makes. He's going to sing the Rock Fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.